Hi, I'm Lee,
And I'm Brandon.
and this is That's What He Said, a show where two self-proclaimed football geniuses tell you how it was and how it will be. Let's get going, Brandon.
All right, let's do it. All right, getting to the scoreboard from Saturday's games. Tennessee traveled to Georgia between the hedges to take on the Bulldogs. Tennessee put forth a much better showing than it has. They fall to 0-2 in the conference as Georgia takes a 38-12 win between the hedges.
Yeah, just like we talked about, Georgia was just too much, too deep. But if Tennessee covered, which we both thought they would cover,
Right.
then they should be pleased with themselves. So they covered, and I think they should be pleased with themselves. They're going to move forward one step at a time. It's rebuilding times 10, right? And that's
Right.
what they're in the middle of.
A pivotal spot. They allowed Georgia to go on a long drive right before halftime. Backup quarterback Justin Fields gets it in the end zone for Georgia. And then Georgia received the second half kickoff and another touchdown there. So a 14-point swing there. Tennessee's offense couldn't get a whole lot going in the first half. Didn't turn the ball over. Got 2 touchdowns on the board in the second half and was really getting 3 and outs, getting stops from Georgia. So much better showing for Tennessee. A costly fumble later in the fourth quarter that Georgia went on about a 7-minute drive to ice it. So the game a lot closer than what it actually was. But in the end, just too much Georgia.
That's a good point there about the 14 points. 1 touchdown before halftime, 1 touchdown after halftime from receiving the kick in the second half.
Right.
And you're right. That does basically give an extra possession to Georgia and then an extra possession with the fumble as well.
Right.
So Tennessee making some progress. Some progress is progress.
Right.
Hang on, let's do that. Get your shoulder in a little more.
Okay.
There we go.
Tennessee heads into the bye week, relatively healthy. A couple of guys got a little banged up Saturday. Nothing big though. So the bye week probably coming at a good time for Tennessee
Oh yeah, after Georgia.
after Georgia. So next, Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns headed to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, as expected, a 56-14 winner. Alabama scored in every way to open this game, 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. Punt return. Tua being Tua, several receivers getting in on the scoring acts, running backs look solid again. Another great performance.
Yeah, Saban was pretty upset at the students. I don't know if you heard about this.
Yes.
Very, very low attendance because they just thought the game was decided.
Mm-hmm.
But I like watching my team win. That's when you want to go. You don't want to go to the games where, well, not that Alabama's going to lose one this year, but you don't want to go. Did I jinx it?
Are we predicting something here?
Did I jinx it?
Perfect season, perhaps.
But the bottom line is I like watching my team win, so I don't get it. I think I would have gone. If I had free tickets, student tickets, I would have been there. So Saban a little peeved. There's a shocker.
Yeah, really. Really. Moving on, Arkansas and Texas A&M meet in Arlington. This game is close every year. We talked about it might be closer than what people think just because these two teams just flat out don't like each other. It's a great rivalry game played at a neutral site. Anytime you get to play in an NFL stadium, let alone what the Dallas Cowboys Stadium is in Arlington, just a great venue for a game. Texas A&M still having a little bit of a hangover from Clemson several weeks ago. Kellen Mond, not a terrible performance. 2 interceptions I know he'd like to have back, but he still was able to get Texas A&M with 24 points. They come out with the 24-17 win. Arkansas, a little bit better this week.
A little bit. I remember you texting me during that game. You had some interesting things to say.
Couldn't believe it. When you pick somebody to cover the spread, and it's a team that just is not obviously where it wants to be and everything. Should have known better. Again, in a rivalry game like this, in a neutral site game, not really one advantage over the other as far as both teams. So
would you say Arkansas a disappointment still?
Arkansas definitely still not where they want to be, but to be able to hold that high-powered offense that A&M's got to just 24 points while being in the game now. It was 24-10. Arkansas does score a late touchdown and actually got the ball back, but couldn't do anything with it. A&M runs out the clock, escapes with a 24-17 win. Where are both of these teams going right now? Arkansas, we already know where they are. They're a lot like Tennessee in the SEC East. Can Arkansas get an SEC West win this year? Or will Tennessee get the first SEC East win?
I don't think it's going to be Tennessee just because who they play the next 4 weeks in a row, but I can't say that it could be Arkansas either. What's Arkansas' schedule? Do we know that?
Arkansas gets to host Alabama this week. The following week, they've got Ole Miss at home, so obviously 2 pretty significant games coming up for them, and they get a non-conference battle after that against Tulsa. Arkansas 1-4 right now, Tulsa 1-3. Who knows what they'll be in 3 weeks? When they actually meet, could be another non-conference letdown.
Very well could be. Arkansas could easily go 0-3 in the next few games.
Right.
So it's hard to say who's going to win first,
Right.
Arkansas or Tennessee. That's all I got to say about
That's all
that.
you got to say. Moving right along, Southern Miss makes the trip north to Jordan-Hare to take on Auburn. Auburn with a 24-13 win. Auburn, another victory, not as impressive.
You had some text for me during that game as well.
Mm-hmm. I said on the show last week, Southern Miss likes to play these SEC teams a little bit closer. You look over the several years, Alabama, even back 10, 12 years ago, had some phenomenal games against Southern Miss. Games where, they're going into the fourth quarter. If I'm not mistaken, the famous Tyrone Pro throw catch where he pinned it on the back of the defensive back was against Southern Miss.
That's right, it was.
So, Southern Miss has a history of playing the SEC well. Obviously, hanging around in this game, 24-13. Auburn's offense right now, the hurry-up offense, that's only going to benefit you if you are able to actually get teams tired and whatnot.
And maybe mess with them with substitutions, but now since they're that's not a new rule.
Right.
But coaches are getting better about knowing they can wait and substitute when they need to, and so you really don't have that advantage anymore at all. Because as soon as there's a substitution, the ref's just going to put his hand up.
Right, and not let him snap the ball. Yeah. So where does Auburn go moving forward?
Well, Auburn, it's interesting. We would kind of say that they're disappointing so far, even though they only have 1 loss. But they do have, obviously, a lot of talent at quarterback. Maybe he's underperformed so far. Maybe they've tried to be vanilla here and there because they know that they have a big season in front of them. But for me, Auburn's got to have some consistency and some more offensive production. And Gus Malzahn's system is supposed to be a flashy system that can move the ball in a hurry, can wear teams down. And it used to be that you could wear teams down with that type of system because they get so tired. You couldn't substitute, but now they've adjusted the rules some.
You think about the number of plays on offense that Auburn actually gets each game with that fast hurry up tempo, getting so many plays in. I know several years ago they were down to getting a ball snapped about every 16, 18 seconds. When you're able to do that with a lot of success, your defense, first of all, that other coach is going to be using all 3 of their timeouts just to give his guys a break. And that's playing right into the scheme of what Auburn's wanting to do. And I'm going to ask you this, okay? We're going to fast forward a week here. Tennessee travels to Auburn next week. Can Tennessee hang around based on what you saw this past Saturday against Georgia, and with Auburn maybe underperforming a little bit, Pruitt having coached against Auburn the last several years, whether he be at Alabama or even the defensive coordinator at Georgia, can Tennessee hang around?
I think Tennessee can. I think they can keep it close. I think Auburn will probably pull away toward the end.
Right.
But I think Tennessee's going to keep it interesting. And
just food for thought.
Yeah,
just food for thought. Next, Tennessee State makes the crosstown trip to Dudley Field in Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt barely escapes with a 31-27 win. Obviously, a kind of a letdown for Derek Mason and his bunch, but the real story of this game, TSU linebacker Christian Abercrombie collapses after a head injury that was sustained in the second quarter. Rushed to Vanderbilt Medical Emergency where they had to perform emergency surgery. Earlier in the week, he was still listed in critical care. I have not heard an update in the last day. I don't know if you've heard anything at all. Obviously, thoughts with that young man and his family. So hopefully, he can get back to doing what he loves to do very soon. As far as the actual game goes, Kyle Shermer, not a bad day at all. It just seemed like TSU had a response or an answer for everything Vanderbilt did. TSU, their converted wide receiver from quarterback, Treon Harris, the former Florida Gator starting quarterback from a couple of years ago, a monstrous game. Over 100 yards receiving, a couple of touchdowns, I do believe. Just a big game. And we've talked a lot about Derek Mason's defense. What was the difference in this game?
I'm tempted to think that Vanderbilt was mailing it in a little bit, maybe even trying to be a little vanilla because they've got
maybe looking ahead.
I was about to say, still have a good season going, thinking as they start heading into the meat of SEC play, let's not give away too many things. Surely we can take care of this little team, this crosstown rival, without having to open the book up completely. And then all of a sudden, your game plan is to do it that way. And so you haven't been working on a lot of those plays maybe during the week. And now you got to open it up and try to pull something out.
So I guess we have to ask ourselves now: is Vanderbilt finally coming down a little bit, or was this just kind of a letdown game?
I think this was a letdown game. I think this was just looking ahead, mailing it in.
Still a lot of ball to be played.
Oh yeah,
still a lot of ball to be played. Moving on, Florida. Dan Mullen and his Florida Gators make the trip back to Starkville, where he plays against his former team. An absolute grinded out game. Gator Jay and I have already talked about this game. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago answering a question. A couple other Gator fans that I've just run into throughout the week, they all said the same thing. They loved watching that game because it was back to old school. Florida was going to run the football. Florida was going to take some chances. We said it would be a low scoring game. We said it would be a low-scoring game. Florida defensively, the fourth down stop at the end of the game on Nick Fitzgerald where the safety just comes through, untouched blitz, and absolutely lays the quarterback out. That was the exclamation point for Florida. And Dan Mullen gets a victory in his return trip back to Starkville.
And now, which one of us was it predicted that Florida would win?
I don't remember exactly.
You don't remember?
It was you.
It'll come to us.
It was you.
Oh, okay.
It was you.
Okay. All right.
I thought with that being an emotional thing for Dan Mullen, he handled it very, very well. Several big plays in this game. A Florida receiver and a Mississippi State receiver dropping not just balls, but wide open catches that would have gone for touchdowns. Florida's was earlier in the game. Nick Fitzgerald puts a perfect pass out to his receiver with about 5 minutes to go in the game. At the 5-yard line, I mean, he just dropped it. That would have tied the game up. Who knows? You get the game into overtime there, you probably like Mississippi State's chances a little bit better just because of their ability on offense.
Home field advantage.
Home field advantage as well.
All right.
Moving on, South Carolina ventures into Lexington to the Commonwealth, and they get beat by Kentucky. The 5-0 Kentucky Wildcats. The 5-0.
We talked
Kentucky
about were we
Wildcats.
going to say that, and we both predicted that we would say
predict
that.
They would say that.
That's some little self-proclaimed football genius coming out.
Benny Snell, another big game. This kid is just having an unbelievable year. Stoops is finally reaping the benefits, and all the hard work, all the preparation, all the growing pains are finally paying off for Kentucky.
So is Kentucky a top 15 team?
Yes, for two reasons. One, ESPN voted them.
Yeah.
They're the number 13 team in the country right now. But I think you have to put them in there. You know, they've had two big wins over teams that are very well respected. They continue to not be fancy about what they're doing. They're downhill running the ball.
They're just playing football.
They're just playing
football. They're not scheming. They're just making plays. And yeah, I think that the more difficult question would be asking if Kentucky should be outside the top 15 because they're 5-0. They've beaten legit teams, and they beat an old school SEC team in South Carolina who has won games this year, beat Vanderbilt. And so Kentucky's here, and it's fun to watch, and I'm glad we were able to get to predict a 5-0 Kentucky, because to predict 5-0 Kentucky and then to see it happen, that's never happened in our lifetime.
It's never happened. It's never happened. So obviously, Big Blue Nation, stand up, show out a little bit. Kentucky. Last game of the weekend was Ole Miss heading to LSU. LSU really pouring it on early and pulling away late. 45-16, a very, very good win for Ed Orgeron and his LSU Tigers. Another solid day out of the running game of LSU. The defense played phenomenal again as well. LSU, right there, the number now, 3 ranked team in the country, correct?
I believe that's right. And do you think that Orgeron's seat is cooled off substantially?
Ed Orgeron has nothing to worry about
I agree.
right now.
I agree.
I think the way he's responded to the critics, I think he's the way, winning solves everything. There's no question about that. But the way his guys are going about winning, the kind of grit, the swag that they're playing with, something obviously you love to see.
They're playing with a lot of poise. They're playing hard. They're playing like they're coached by someone who motivates them.
Right.
And who they love. Who they love playing for, and they love playing hard for Coach Orgeron. So it's fun to watch as an SEC
Always
fan.
fun. Always fun. Let's move on to this week. You want to make some picks?
I don't know. Yeah, we can make some picks.
Let's do it.
Let's make some picks.
All right. I'm going to go in order here of how these games will be played this weekend. First one, number 1, the Alabama Crimson Tide travel to Fayetteville to take on the struggling Hogs of Arkansas. Arkansas may find a little bit more balance on offense, might find their way into the scoreboard once or twice. If that, Alabama's going to score often. Their defense will have a defensive score in this game. Ty Story, the quarterback at Arkansas, still trying to find his way. Tony, the other quarterback, trying to figure things out as well. Both still playing at this point. Alabama big.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that Tua is going to pick apart Arkansas's defense, and they will score at will. It'll be pretty ugly. It's my opinion, and we're going to see Jalen, assuming he hasn't redshirted.
I can't now.
That's right.
He
burned it.
Burned it.
So we will see Jalen.
Jalen, you will see.
And we will see a lot of backups, and it'll be a rough game for Arkansas, but they're like Tennessee in that they're rebuilding, so they just kind of have to take this one.
That's a noon Eastern game. Another noon Eastern game Saturday. Missouri heads to Columbia, South Carolina. Currently, South Carolina 1.5 favorites. This game could go either way. How do you see it coming out?
Well, I think this is the most interesting game of the week.
Could be.
What do you think?
I'm going to say there's another one that's a little more interesting.
I think
as far as this game goes, I'll go ahead and make a pick on it. There's no question South Carolina is improving and everything. But Jake Bentley still doing some good things. Debo Samuel, love his name. But I think it's a little bit too much Missouri and Drew Lock. We've talked about him a lot and those receivers. The running game with Crockett, Emmanuel Hall at receiver. Just a lot of offense there. South Carolina, I think this could be a lower scoring game. I don't know that it gets out of the 20s. For the SEC, that's pretty low. I don't know that it gets much higher than that unless both teams, are really finding ways, making adjustments in the second half to try to put up as many points as possible. I think Missouri wins a close game.
Yeah, I picked Missouri as well. Missouri, mostly because I feel like that they have such stability on offense and such a leader on offense, and I don't feel that with South Carolina. I don't really see much of an identity with South Carolina. I will say they do play hard.
Right.
They just don't seem to have it together. They aren't able to generate the kind of plays they need to generate to score enough. And defensively, they're just really inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, going against Missouri, that's exactly what would play into Missouri's hands. What I just described is what Missouri wants.
Right.
To play against.
It obviously it's a benefactor to be in front of the crowd in Columbia, Williams-Brice Stadium. That is a 11 o'clock game, like I said. So hopefully the crowd will show up. Alabama playing another noon game. Obviously it's on the road. What kind of crowd there'll be for those, we'll just have to wait and see. My most interesting game of the week is number 5, not number 3. I apologize to the other teams that are up there ahead of that. Number 5, LSU travels to the Swamp to take on number 22, Florida. LSU currently a 2.5 point favorite. Prediction?
LSU.
Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about LSU's running game. We've talked a lot about the quarterback figuring out things. But Dan Mullen has proven a lot in the last couple of weeks. how he has rebounded from what he said after the post-game or the game against Kentucky, his post-game comments, whether we'd won or lost tonight, we got a lot of problems. We got to fix us.
Right.
And that being said, it being in the swamp and everything, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say Florida wins a very, very close game.
Just how close are you talking?
I'm talking this is probably a 1 to 3 point game.
Wow.
As far as an overall score, I really don't know what to expect. Florida's defense is good enough to keep LSU's offense off the field. But I think LSU's offense can contain Florida as well. So you may be looking at another, 17-15, 17-13 game.
That is an interesting game. And I still do pick LSU.
LSU?
But I respect your decision
Florida.
to pick Florida.
You know what?
It makes sense.
Dan Mullen, you know what? He's going to get a big test this weekend.
I like both of these coaches.
Yeah.
I really do.
Absolutely. Louisiana Monroe heads down to the Grove to take on Ole Miss. Ole Miss currently at 3-2. Ole Miss at 3-2. Ole Miss currently a 22-point favorite. I'll go ahead and say it. I don't think they're going to cover the spread. Louisiana Monroe, as we've said before, plays SEC teams much closer, pretty tough and everything. I do think Ole Miss gets a win closer than what people think.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That's a little high on that, especially with the suspect Ole Miss defense. The Land Shark defense is just not quite the Land Shark defense this year. It's more like the Land Minnow defense.
Right.
And so I think Louisiana Monroe is going to be able to move the ball.
Right.
And if anything, occupy the clock.
Right.
And keep the ball out of Ole Miss's hands. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they're going to cover.
Moving on, Kentucky, number 13, 5-0 Kentucky heads down to Aggieland. Kyle Field to take on Jimbo Fisher's Texas A&M Aggies. Texas A&M currently a 6-point favorite. This game's being played at 6 o'clock at night. That place will be electric. Kentucky is 5-0. What happens?
I am going to say that Kentucky beats Texas A&M.
Bold prediction.
Bold.
Close?
I think it'll be under 20 points. So I think Kentucky can win big.
Fairly big.
Because I do feel like Kentucky has leadership in offense. They're believing in themselves. Like I said a couple weeks ago, I think that Kentucky takes Kentucky seriously. It's not just about believing in yourself, but I think they actually believe that they can contend. And A&M is still breaking in a new coach. I mean, we especially at the start of the year, we thought Jimbo Fisher really had things already running. He'd already hit the ground running.
Right.
But I'm just not feeling it quite the same, and I'm beginning to wonder if he's going to be starting to experience some of those hiccups of a new system that we thought he would be experiencing. And I think Kentucky's got a lot of stability, and I'm going to have fun rooting for Kentucky. There's a lot of SEC teams in the top 25 this year. This is a great year to be an SEC fan.
I believe there's 6 currently in the top 25.
Yeah, and I think Kentucky's got a lot of momentum. They have the wind at their back. They believe in themselves. What better formula to beat A&M? It's not like A&M is a top 10 team anyway. And first-year head coach, I think Kentucky made sense. And I want to pick Kentucky, but I also think Kentucky will win.
I would like to pick Kentucky as well, but gone back and forth on this one several times. We talked just a minute ago, A&M kind of had the letdown. They need a marquee game. They need a big win for this year to get them jump-started for the rest of the conference. I think Texas A&M wins a very close game. Kentucky, unfortunately, I think is 5-1 after this game. Texas A&M needs this win. Texas A&M needs this win big time. I think you're going to see a sloppy, low-scoring game. I think just with the way it'll play out, the crowd will be a huge factor Saturday night. I think Texas A&M, again, like I said, they need this win. I think they find a way to get it done with Kellen Mond throwing the ball, Travion Williams running the ball. They finally find a balance of attack on offense. Texas A&M wins a very close game.
Well, I don't know how they're going to find it this week against Kentucky playing as well as they are. I like Kentucky being in the abundance mindset. They're winning. Things are going well. A&M, I don't like a team playing from a position of need. You know, that's a scarcity mentality. But I understand why you're saying that, and we are opposed now twice this week, right? So it was this game. What was the other game we were opposed? Oh, LSU, Florida. You pick Florida, pick LSU. So
Florida.
We will see.
We will see. Vanderbilt heads between the hedges to take on number 2 ranked Georgia. Georgia currently a 27-point favorite. Again, another night game in Athens. I think Georgia scores kind of at will in this game. I think Vanderbilt is coming in. Georgia's catching Vanderbilt at a really good time. Based on the performance we saw last week, there's no question Vanderbilt is going to be able to put some points up. But at the end of the day, I think Georgia's defense is too good. I think Georgia's offense will score in many ways. The great running backs that they've got with Holyfield and DeAndre Swift, Mecole Hardman, Isaac Nauta at the tight end, and of course Jake Fromm slinging the ball all over the yard. Not his best game last week against Tennessee. Really didn't see him air it out a whole lot. A couple plays here and there. I think he rebounds and has a very big week. I'm going to say Georgia big.
I'm going to say Georgia medium.
Medium.
Georgia medium.
So we still agree.
Mm-hmm. We agree.
Good deal. Number 8, Auburn heads to Mississippi State into Starkville to take on Joe Moorhead's Bulldogs. Auburn currently sitting at 4-1. Mississippi State at 3-2, coming off the loss to Dan Mullen and the Gators. Auburn only a 4-point favorite in this game. Another night game in Starkville. The cowbells ringing. Could this be an upset?
This is an interesting game too. This would probably be in the hat for most interesting game of the week. But I think what happens here is that the Auburn strength at quarterback finally begins to come through against a first-year coach at Mississippi State. And I think Auburn pulls it out late in the game. It being played at Mississippi State, is that right? I think that Mississippi State hangs around a long time, but Auburn just a little bit too much for Mississippi State, a fourth quarter type of win. But I think that Auburn can use this because they are in a little bit of a need position just because they have one loss. And obviously Auburn is one of those teams that expects themselves to be the top 10 team at the end of the year, wants to play for the national championship, wants to play for SEC championships.
Right.
And in the SEC, losing an SEC game at this point with the teams that are out there, I think almost guarantees that you won't be in the SEC championship game at this point, especially in the Western Division.
Right.
So it's a big game for Auburn, and they cannot get sloppy. They can't give Mississippi State easy plays and nickel and allow Mississippi State to nickel and dime them.
Mississippi State's good enough to not only hang around in this game but still make some explosive plays of their own. I mean, again, we talked about the one big drop at the end of the Florida game. There was actually another one earlier in the game that keeps the drive alive in Florida territory. So obviously there's plenty of ways that they could have won that game. Man, this is tough.
It's a sticky. It's a sticky situation.
It is. It's one of these where I could see this game going either way.
Yeah. Auburn could lose.
Auburn could lose. At the same time, though, I don't think Auburn's looking ahead. Auburn having Tennessee next week, I don't think they're too worried about that. I think Auburn's got to get back to doing what they do. The balance of attack on offense, being able to run the football, being able to throw the football with consistency. Getting all the running backs, and we had a game several weeks ago with Auburn where 13 different guys touched the ball. Auburn's got to get back to doing stuff like that. Auburn's defense, a couple of injuries here and there, but overall they're going to have to find a better balance on offense. I will say I do think Auburn wins a very close game. As much as I want to pick Mississippi State in this game, I do think Auburn will find a way. I think right now, we talk about Auburn needs to get better on offense, but right now Auburn's offense is a little bit ahead of Mississippi State. The crowd keeps Mississippi State in it. Very close game within a touchdown game, I would say.
Yeah, the stability of Auburn's program. Gus Malzahn has been there, seems like forever at this point.
Right.
He had his players, his system. He's going to know what to do in what situations against a first-year Mississippi State coach who has never coached against Auburn. I think that does give the lean to Auburn. So it'll be interesting, though. It's definitely in there for most interesting game of the week. It's a candidate.
That's all the picks for this week. Again, please hit that subscribe button at the bottom. comment to us. Let us know the things you like and don't like about the show. Let us know if we talk, enough about your team, or if we don't talk enough about your team. But again, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and let us know what you think.
Have a good week. Hope your team wins. This is Lee for Brandon, and that's what he said. Hit the subscribe button. Bye-bye.
Peace.